I think one of the worst punishments for a crime is the self-realization that maybe you're not mentally sufficient. It's also realizing that maybe you're going to spend a long time in the abject terror of being discovered. This would happen to me when I was 7 years old. I lived in the tiny town of Gould, Colorado. It's a suburb of Walden, if you need a reference. There was 9 of us who lived there at the time, and there was one business, the cookhouse. Everything happened at the cookhouse. We practically lived at the cookhouse. As a matter of fact, we didn't have running water, but they did. So we were there a lot. And they had Budweiser, which my dad drank. The bus actually dropped us off at the cookhouse, and we would single file, me and my brother and sister, into the cookhouse and kill time as much as possible while my father got his drink on. And one day, I just had had enough. I was so bored. I'd washed every bar glass. I'd bossed every table. I even had some bar tricks I would do. I did this thing where I would eat the peanut and then the shell. That was me. I had a closing act, which was tying a cherry stem and a knot in my mouth and then eating it. So pretty much, it was this like basic magician stuff where the pudgy kid makes food-like items disappear. But even that, nourishment and entertainment, I had nothing. I was bored out of my mind. So I had to find something to do. And let me just give you a little tributary here. My father was the scary dad in the county. I don't know if you knew that guy, but that was my dad. And I mean, you know, a decent dad, but just didn't have time for modern parenting books. Dr. Spock was a pointy-eared alien on a spaceship. I mean, this is stuff that he didn't have time for. He was notorious for throwing children. He was a kid thrower, you know, all makes and models, he would throw them. And like if you screwed up and he caught up with you, soon you had R. Kelly in your head. Like you're just, I believe I can fly. I mean, so maybe inspiring, maybe that's what he was going for. So I didn't want to perturb this guy. I just wanted to somehow assuage my boredom. So I went outside. And the cookhouse had like, it was brown. It had like this old like saloon look from, you know, like John Wayne movies. And it had a part of a log cabin facade. And I was kicking some dirt in the parking lot when I noticed this beautiful aberration. It was a blue poster. And I went and investigated this blue poster on the brown logs. And somebody, some duet that was going to perform in Fort Collins, had bothered to put a promotional poster in Gould. Like, it was so heartwarming. I was like, that's for me. Or at least 10% of it is. Like Denver concert posters, they're not worried about a percentage. It's for everybody. You have to share, but this was for me. And I started fantasizing about like knowing these people and them buying me sodas for crushing it on tambourine after one of our gigs. And I noticed, I was already very close and defensive of these people that I did not know, and I noticed their concert poster was flagging a bit. It was askew, and there was a thumbtack on the ground. And that the first thing I'm going to do for this lovely couple is this. So I got the thumbtack, and I stabbed it into the log. Now, you don't know when your life is going to change. You just don't know. You worry about it, and then one day it changes with the amazing sensation of this little silver dagger being stabbed into a log. And I just kept doing it. You might be thinking, what? And I get that. But do you remember, you know when you're cutting gift wrapping paper and the scissor catches a wave and just takes you with it? You know, the holidays aren't so bad. That's like my version of doing heroin. Is just giving. And so stabbing that felt so good. And so I just went crazy. I was doing the paranoid stare. And I realized that I shouldn't create a cluster of holes. It wouldn't be good for the band, wouldn't be good for me. So I went inside, and I saw my dad. And I should also note about my dad, kind of a misperception I may have had, is that he drank Budweiser, and at around 7 years old, I kind of thought the king of beers was reflective upon his status. Like, I thought that really meant we were a thing. We went camping once with some family friends, and their dad drank hams. And I was really worried about them. Like, do they have enough money to eat? Like, so at the intersection of fear and respect, I hid my tack and snuck back to the dining room of the cookhouse. And nobody ate there unless it was tourist season and they were buying steaks. And I went back to the back bathroom and closed the door, and I was in this wood-paneled heaven. I did some initial stabbing, but it wasn't satisfactory. So I sat down on the toilet seat, and I wanted to write something. It's like, wow, this is my canvas. At 7, I was like, what words do I know that I can write well? So I wrote my first and last name across the wall. Huge letters. If a 7-year-old handwriting was a font, it would be called Homicidal Maniac. It's just massive. And I backed away from an eagle wingspan of my work. And that's when I realized how dumb I was. Because not only the basest criminal personalizes their crime, and that's when the abject terror would set in. I would go to school the next day, I could barely function. I even had like this soft after-school special moment with my teacher who was wondering what was wrong. And then I would ride the bus home. Every day, 45-minute death march back home. But every day that I was paranoid, my dad wouldn't know. I would come home and be cheery. I'd be like, oh, you don't know. He didn't know until I trained myself to be scared for months and then years. Until one day, 5 years later, in middle school, my dad would tromp into the house and say, what in the hell were you thinking? And then all the fear came back. And he said, do you know how dumb that is? And I was thrilled to respond and say, yes, actually, I got that right. I know how dumb it is. He tried to throw me, but I put on some weight. So we talked how we were going to fix it, and I was going to get some stain and fix it. And then the cookhouse would actually close down for far greater public disturbances than my misdeed. So still, the cookhouse, that empty shell in the back bathroom, there's my name, my crime, my punishment. Thank you. My name is Jared.